Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, you wouldn't have heard this one for the thousandth time. It's how I open up my live show every single night. I do this Monday to Fridays, this show, and I actually have another show I do on Sunday nights, a little bit lighter, because we are doing shadow work. But in that shadow work, it's just doing it in baby steps, right? In those small spoonfuls, that much that we can handle, right? Lots of times it's off-putting, it's heavy, we're about to go to bed, we don't need these things on our mind, but it has to be done. I really believe that we should always be looking at our past, not to terrorize ourselves, make ourselves feel bad, to rehash bad experiences, but in a way, it is what we have to do, because that's where the answers lay, in the problems, right? The problems that we have now in our lives, emotionally, physically, and mentally, they all come from our childhood. I believe that wholeheartedly. If you had asked me that 10 years ago, I would have had no idea what you were talking about. And if you had mentioned some of the characters that I've been delving into for the past half a dozen years, right? That I would just like, I wouldn't have believed it, because I never thought that I was that person to even have an interest in some of these. They're intellectual subjects, they most definitely are. And it is in playing with our understandings and playing a little bit, handling. When I say play, I don't mean play, because it's not play, it's serious. But to play, I mean to handle our emotions, because lots of times we hold everything inside. And when we go to people and we express these problems and these issues and some of these little idiosyncrasies that we have, addictions even, it brings up a lot of those emotions. And those emotions are what we're trying to resolve in ourselves. And we don't even want to touch them. We don't want to look at them. We don't want to re experience them. We don't want to go through that pain again. But I tell you from my own experience, and this is 100% the truth, I was pretty messed up. I came from a very dynamic family built on archetypes, to put it mildly. And in those dynamic relationships, I had found myself in that role, scapegoat. Lots of us, right? Find ourselves in that situation, and we take it on because that's how we were brought up, right? And when you're brought up that way, quite often what we do is we take on that baton, right? And when these projections are not around us, these characters in our lives are not around us, they don't even need a babysitter. They don't need bodyguards or people watching over us to remind us, because we pick up that baton ourselves and quite often live our lives as our own dynamic projector. Let's just put it that way. We could be putting it mildly. We could be putting it accurately, and it's not heavy duty. But if we have issues, guaranteed they're coming from somewheres back there, right? And it might be just in a short distance, right? This is how, let's call it what it is, trauma. We pick this up. And sometimes we pick these things up in little bites until it's just compounded into something big. Sometimes it starts as one big, incredible, unmanageable, unmanageable, unimaginable, but unmanageable too, right? Experiences that hit us just once and it does the same trick. These ones usually are, well, if you just want to put it in a profession, it would be your paramedics, your surgeons, your firemen, your police officers, your SWAT teams, right? The military. And I talk through my own experience, but in my own experiences, there are other characters in that. And I have to recognize that because, I don't want to speak for anybody else. I only want to speak through my own experiences. And that's the thing when you're working with emotions, when you're working with past experiences, usually, right? There's more than one person tangoing in that experience, right? We're not normally having that experiences all by ourselves, right? That self-sabotage, that what do you call that? Flagging ourselves, that talking badly about ourselves, that compounded limiting beliefs that we pick up when we're kids and then we carry them right on into our adulthood, that these things impact us so badly. We don't want to talk to anybody. It's just so personal. And because nobody else there is discussing it, we think we're the only ones that have these experiences. And I can tell you, I'm in it. And I come across people all the time. And yes, it takes a little bit of bravery, a little bit of courage to talk about these things with other people. But you guys, we live in this age of AI learning where you can go into Google and you can ask any question you want and you can delve deep, right? You can go in light if you want. And I always suggest that we start with the baby steps, just simple questions, things that we know that we can handle, right? That again, we don't want to put ourselves right back into that experience and double up, right? The pain, the frustration, the nightmares, right? And also those coping mechanisms that we pick up along the way. And that's a big one too, right? If you're anything like me, right? You've been coping in lots of different ways your entire life, and if not lots of different ways, you've been going hard in maybe one or two different ways. And it's just another reason, right? That's the way we think, to beat ourselves up, to drum up that guilt and shame that we were brought up. It was in that intent, right? It was to keep us straight, to keep us on the straight and narrow when there weren't watchers and handlers around to do it for us, right? That's why we pick up that baton. It's because that's how we were taught, right? And then there's that idea you can't teach old dog new tricks. And we bring that right into our adulthood, right into our relationships. And more importantly, we bring that to the table with the next generation, our own children. And if not our children, our grandchildren. You know how that idea that the grandchildren just spoil the grandkids and everything. It's in that maturity that we kind of find ourselves isolated with our thoughts and our emotions. And sometimes we do that minimal amount of shadow work, and we come to recognize that those missteps that we did with our own children, that maybe we can do a little bit better by our grandkids. And what do we end up doing? We spoil the grandkids, right? And not only do we spoil the grandkids, our own children, right? They're watching this, they're experiencing this, and they don't believe it to be true because that was not the experience that they had with you, right? So I do hang out with some smarty pants, right? I don't pretend to know it all. Like I said, I stay in my own experiences, but some of us we have some crazy experiences, and a lot of these issues are relatable in lots of relationships, lots of dynamic experiences. And that's a life lived, isn't it? And it's not to take away from the 20-year-old, right? Because if I had woken up to any of these ideas in my 20s, believe me, I would have been on it, right? I would have been on it, and I would have been out there, and I would have been young enough to do a little bit of course correction. When I say course correction, I mean I probably would have been a psychologist or a philosopher, right? I would have gone back to school. I would have been that archaeologist. Hello, Tammy. I would have been that archaeologist that I always dreamed to be, right? And it wasn't in one field of archaeology. I've kind of touched base since then in different aspects of archaeology. Right now, I am just like right into the Neolithics, and that's a first for me. And that one's been going on now, oh my goodness, probably 5 years that I've gone back that far. For me, up until 4 or 5 years ago, I just called it caveman. That's what I knew about the Neolithics. I didn't know anything about Neanderthals or Denisovans or right. I don't think I even understood the word Homo sapiens, to tell you the truth. But in our choices and in wanting to better ourselves, sometimes it's just in entertaining ourselves. And that's how I got into it, right? You know, YouTube is fairly new, but you can touch on absolutely every single imaginable subject out there. And you can talk to Tammy because she's been going back into my videos, going back 10, 11 years, you guys. That's how long I've been here on YouTube. I have no idea how I got drawn into social media, but I'm so grateful for that because in that curiosity and in that stumbling over myself to be a content creator, not just be a content creator, but to find my place on YouTube as a creator, that right I stumbled onto, well, exploring the inside as well as exploring the outside. And exploring the inside was actually only filler because I was an urban explorer, I was a back road explorer, I was doing tours of provincial parks. Like, I was out on the road. It was my passion. It still is a passion of mine. But there came a time where life gets to us, trips us up, and in that adapt and conquer, and not only in that adapt and conquer, but being able to find mentorship, to find amazing leadership out there to give me direction in how to move, right? That I could combine all my interests. So when I got shut down in going out on the road every single week. I mean, I just love Mother Nature. I just love being on the road, right? And it was something that my dad indulged in. And because he loved his family, he took his screaming kids and his cranky wife with him on the road. And he loved it. And it was something that, I found a passion for. And when I decided that I wanted to be a YouTube creator, right, one of the first lessons I got is do what you love, right? Bring to the table what you love. And what I loved was being out on the road. But when I found that life was crashing, right, as it always does for all of us. Hello. I'm just going to read this real quickly. Cindy, I've always loved archaeology. I wish I could have made it a career at times. I took geology in college and took even more of a passion for archaeology. Yeah, I've archaeology has been a part of my life. I remember in grade 1, I got pulled, well, I don't want to trail too far off, but I got pulled into a counselor's office where my teacher, the school counselor, had made me a little hygiene basket, right? I guess people didn't want to hang out with me because, right, I didn't know how to take care of myself. I was just a kid. I was only like 7 years old, right? At that point, your parents are supposed to teach you these things. But if you've hung out with me and any length of time, us kids were like feral kids, right? Hygiene was not on the top of the list of learning. And yeah, and I remember having a conversation with them and mentioning I wanted to be an archaeologist. And then when I went back to class, all embarrassed because I had had that conversation about hygiene with the teachers, and I knew I had to go home and explain it to my parents. And it was very traumatic experience for me. But more traumatic is when they cornered me in class and specifically asked, who wants to be an archaeologist? Well, just the day before I had had this conversation with them. And I knew immediately that they were trying to get me to put my hand up. And I refused. I was embarrassed. And I knew they were specifically talking about me, but it put me in a very cautious state. Even at that young age, to have the smarts that I was kind of understanding how these teachers, how these adults were thinking, right? That even as a small child at that age, I got the message loud and clear. But yeah, it started in my first grade of school. I was madly in love with dinosaurs. I wanted to work as an archaeologist in dinosaurs and be a field archaeologist. I wanted to dig them up. And then as I grew older, I remember I became a historical buff. Like I love Scotland, and I would just delve into um, that era. And then I delved into Egyptology, and I was in Egyptology, oh my goodness, for at least 10 or 15 years before I expanded into Mesopotamia and right and other things. But I never hit the Neolithic. I never hit right what I knew as cavemen. And that became much later. And it became part of that mixed interest and part of that content that I was delving into. It was just in those baby steps of allowing myself to get interested in topics that I always had an interest in, but I didn't have a compulsion. I didn't have, right? I never thought that I had the smarts, the understanding to get it, right? Because I never went to college, right? Well, I did go to college, but I got kicked out after 2 weeks because I kept falling asleep in class. I was working the night shift as a server in a restaurant, and then I would go to school right after right after working all night. I don't know what was going on in my head. And then after 2 weeks, the professor kind of suggested that college was probably not my thing. And I quit right there and I never went back ever again. And it was a silly course that I was taking too, as machine transcription that has absolutely no place in the world anymore, right? But I'm sure I would have expanded in the field, right? Okay, so I came off a little bit from the main branch, so I'm just gonna have a sip of my coffee and then we'll pull ourselves right back. Hello, Eugene. Hello, dear. Oh, Hanner's here too. Hello, Hanner. Yeah, so when I say, I explore the inside and I explore the outside, exploring the inside actually came from exploring the outside, you know. And then when it said, ask yourself a question, right? Something that you always wanted to know, that you have, if you could have the answer for. And then, for myself, is I wanted to know what went wrong. What was that experience all about as a kid that caused me so many problems as an adult? And that was the start of it, right? It was just in those baby steps, in those small introductions, those, right? And of course, right, this age of AI learning with YouTube and Google, it was a miracle that at my age, because I was well into my 50s already, that I was pulled into these top, not pulled, I was drawn, I was enticed, right? Everybody's vying for your attention, but it's in our choices, right? To decide what's going to get our attention. Is it the headline news? Yay, just to cause us more trauma. Yay. Or is it to entertain ourselves, right? With Survivor and Big Brother, been there. They were some of my favorite shows, and I would just be glued. My whole life would be wrapped around those television shows, right? And to each one of us, we get to decide how we're going to use our time and how we are going to use the information that is out there and what those sources are going to come from. Like, are we going to sit and watch Netflix all day, right? Binge on a whole series. I know you can do that now. I never got to the point of Netflix because I got rid of my TV. Oh my goodness, it must be 7 years ago that I got rid of my television. I haven't watched a television show. Seriously, I have not watched a television show. I've caught bits and pieces as you walk into a visit a friend and they've got their TV on, like I've caught that, right? But I have not sat and watched one television show in 6 or 7 years. And never missed it. Not from day one, right? I love the creativity. I love to be um, immersed in fantastical stories. I do, even though I threw the TV out, I would still go to the movie theaters, right? Because I love Lord of the Rings and the Hobbits and right. I loved movies. I loved drama. I loved horror movies. I really did for the longest time loved horror movies, but I couldn't watch a horror movie anymore. Not that it would scare me or anything. It just doesn't entice me in any way, right? I think these kind of movies cause more problems than they do good, right? I do have a little DVD player, maybe once a year. I have movies here that I've had for a few years, and I bought those. Oh, this looks interesting, and haven't even watched them yet. And if you can see behind me here, I collect the whole series of ice ages. Now, those ones I have seen. And, because of global warming and everything, and because of my passion and my love for evolution, because that's part of history too. People don't think that the future is tied to the past, but it most definitely is. And this series, this Ice Age animated show, it just opened me up like 100%, and not in a silly way, not in a unpractical way, right? But in a true way, in my understanding that it takes all kinds to make the world. And if you watched any of the Ice Ages, you would know the characters. They're all different. They're all different animals, right? All extinct. And then they're him. He's my favorite character, and he runs around with his little acorn in the introduction of each one of the movies, and at the end of every one of these movies. And for me, the acorn is the earth, right? It's civilization. It's the world. And he always at the last minute saves it, but he loses it consistently. And that's the part that is actually so beautiful. It's in that never giving up, and it's that passion, right? Yeah, I love the Ice Ages 100. Yeah, yeah. Scrat. This is my favorite character in the whole movie, but all the characters are absolutely amazing, right? And it's a true form. I think whoever thought of the series, and I think the series is all broken up now, right? They do specials and things every once in a while. I even buy those ones, but the main idea, the guy who actually wrote the story and created the characters and everything, like I would love to meet that guy, sit and have a coffee with him, because he has insights, and he might think it's just a movie, but for myself, it's our evolution, because as we move forward, it's going to take all of us, right? It's going to take all of the gifts that each one of us has, all those talents, all those understandings that people are just having a hard time spitting up, right? And that all comes from, right? Right? My generation, it was, there was no place for kids to have a voice, let alone be seen, right? And just in that, it caused so many issues for an entire generation. And in that generation, we had kids, and we passed all that crap down to our kids. And then our kids get resentful because we wake up to a few ideas and we go, oh my goodness, we might have been a little bit tough on the kids, right? Or we see the problems that they're having. We go, oh my goodness, if I hadn't done this, or if I hadn't said this, or if I hadn't sent them to that school, or if I hadn't stuck up for him, or if I had stuck up for them in this point, or if I had taught them a little bit about hygiene, right? That they wouldn't have had these problems as adults, right? And it is in those choices in the end, right? Because I know my parents are gone. There's no resolving those conversations, right? Resolving those problems. The only person that's going to resolve those problems is myself. And the only way that I can do that is to put myself in my parents' shoes, right? In their experiences, right? And what they passed down to their kids, and also in feeling the intent. Because lots of times we have those troubling experiences with our parents, don't we? But sometimes we loosen that rope and we go, oh my goodness, they had problems too, right? But sometimes you really feel, right, that we are rubbed them. We're rubbing them the wrong way, that there's no way of saving a relationship, that the only thing we can do is to get through those years. And that's what we do. We adapt, we conquer, we ride the waves, toughen, we toughen up, we close ourselves off, we become introverts, we become narcissists, we become empaths, right? Borderlines. And the borderlines, that's the scariest one of all, because they cannot be predicted in any way. My mother was a borderline, and it was an experience that I wouldn't want to wish on anybody, right? Because you just have no clue as to when that bomb is gonna go off, and not putting everybody in that same labeling with borderlines, because there are different extents to that too, right? And the same thing with the narcissists and the empaths, and right, so many other different disorders out there. But right, but because we don't talk about these things, because we don't want to, right, share these problems that we have as adults, because they're so attached to guilt and shame, that we don't want to show our weaknesses, because we spend our whole lives toughening up and pretending we're smarty pantses and feeling guilty sometimes because we don't have that college degree, that we didn't make anything of ourselves, that we kind of don't want to talk to anybody. But because of this age of AI learning, you guys, right? You can do it for yourself for the most part, right? I have people that I appreciate out there. But a lot of the content that I take in, a lot of the lessons that I take in are from people who are gone now, right? They are technically part of the past, like Carl Jung, right? And I just meet people like that are so interesting, like Freud. Like, who would have thought, right? I would even be interested in some of the topics that he touches on, and yet I do, and I'm understanding it. Carl Jung is a fairly new one for me, because I happened onto his content, oh, long, long, long time ago. I didn't even understand it. I had no idea what he was talking about. He was so beyond, right, what I could ever hope to understand. But in those baby steps, in those small mouthfuls, in listening to other people say, well, I was listening to this video and Carl Jung was saying this, and you go, what? You go, okay, well, maybe I'll go in and see what he's got to say. And eventually I was in his content, and I'm in his content quite a bit. And I think it's because, it's like the prerequisites. It's just, in the moment you don't understand it, right? But it's just being curious and just taking those first steps in what interests you. What are your passions, right? And of course, my passions were being out on the back roads, camping, urban exploring, bushcraft videos. But again, in not giving up, which was one of the first lessons I ever learned, was to never give up, no matter what, never give up. And I said to myself, wow, okay, I can't get on the road, right? Cindy doesn't have the wheels. Cindy doesn't have the money to do that. Cindy's life is crashing all around her. And recognize that I wasn't able to cope with my life crashing around me for the exact reason as it was something from the past. And so I had to drum up the courage and the bravery to go back and see, what did I do wrong, right? To realize I didn't necessarily do anything wrong. I survived my experience like lots of us do. We survive our experiences, we adapt, we conquer, we ride the waves, and we didn't give up, right? Without even having that first lesson that I got, right? I never gave up, and I found a way, and I introduced exploring the inside along with exploring the outside. And that's where I am now. I'm combining my passion for the outdoors and mother nature and provincial parks and right road trips, and I'm combining it with exploring the inside in those times when I can't get out on the road. And it's so enhanced when I go out on the road. I truly, truly connect with what I'm doing. And I understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. That's a healing process for me. Being out on the road was part of my healing process, and I didn't even know it, right? But just in taking those first few steps, it just kind of led me in, and then I kind of have a little pivot, then I had big pivot. The next thing you know, I'm exploring the inside, and Carl Jung is one of my faves. And I find myself here still 11 years later. I never gave up, right? And to tell you the truth, right? YouTube and Google never gave up on me either. They very well could have, because as I got deeper, I discovered how important it was. And so even if I had that opportunity, and I do, I make sure I take my September trip. September is mine, right? And I go away, I take off no matter what, but I apply myself during the course of the year, because now I just don't want to understand for myself. I want to understand for others too, right? To help others understand where they got things wrong, but where they got things right, right? And if only that one lesson in never giving up, and you never had that lesson before, well, I couldn't give you a better lesson. That really, really did serve me well. And it served my brand well. And it's going to serve others well, because I'm just not going to stop no matter what happens in my life, no matter how I get tripped up. I will find a way, right? It's the most important lesson that I ever got. And I wouldn't have gotten that lesson unless I had allowed myself to be pulled into the age of AI learning, right? Lots of people my age, right? I remember my mom getting her first universal remote control. It was so confusing for her. She got so angry. She took that remote control and she chucked it up against the wall, and it shattered into a gazillion pieces. And that was a Christmas present, not for me, it was for my sister, right? But we just bought her another one. And then we hooked it all up for her, set it all up for her. We showed her the buttons to push. And then as soon as she learned how to push the buttons, life was good again for her, because it's just in not knowing that causes us frustration, that causes us to become triggered and to go back there somewheres and think of ourselves in those projections and go, oh my goodness, this is just terrible, I'll never get this, I'm so stupid, I don't want anything to do with this. And then we just freak out in that, and we shut down, right? And we give up, right? Us girls, we didn't give up. My mother still didn't like technology, right? And she got as far as a video lottery terminal. My whole family liked to gamble. Even my mother did, right? But this is what happens to us, right? As adults, when we don't get it out of our system. It's crying, it's talking, and it's time, right? But sometimes we don't want to spew that with others. We don't want others to see our weaknesses and our limitations. So we keep it inside, we keep it tight, and we pass that to our kids, right? And then your kids pass that to their kids, or your kids get resentful because you've kind of woken up to a few ideas of, oh my goodness, I might have been a little bit hard on my kids. And so you overcompensate with your grandkids, and then your kids become resentful for that, and they think you're phony baloney because that's not the guardianship that they got from you, right? That they got something totally different that messed them right up, right? And so we just have to make some good choices for ourselves. And like I said, that choice to throw my television out and just immerse myself in the understanding, right, of what I got right and what I got wrong. And I got lots right and I got lots wrong. And that's okay, because that's how we get better, right? It is in our failures and understanding our failures and accepting our failures and accepting that everybody fails. And the thing is, the ones sometimes who fail the most, you would never know that they were failures. You would never know because they don't express it. They don't show it. They are right. They represent something different, something that's not true. But if you're highly sensitive, you're empathic in any way, you pick up on that in a moment, and you'll pity that sometimes, or sometimes you'll go, oh, that's a liar, stay away from that. Or you just might look at it and go, that's just too freaky, like that's scary, man, right? And you stay right away. So that's why it's so important for me to always pop in and be genuine, right? It's why I come in lots of time, all the time, and I don't have usually a topic on mine, and I just let that flow, understanding whatever the lessons that's going to come to the surface, that is what's going to come to the surface. And if I fail in that, right, if I trip over myself, I just have to trust, right, that the people who care for me will understand that, and they'll say, oh, at least Cindy tried, right? We'll give her another shot tomorrow. And sometimes I hit it on the mark and I impress myself with that. And that's not in a ego way, because it's only in me coming in after my life and taking the lesson for myself, because in going in the flow afterwards, you go, oh my goodness, I really stuck my foot in my mouth that one. Oh, Cindy, did you really have to bring up that topic? And then you can beat yourself up in that, but you got to remember when that happens, that That's just coming from the past. And the best question is, where in the past is that coming from? Who were the characters who brought that into your system that made it that you are now a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old or a 70-year-old, and you're still dealing with that stuff? That stuff's still popping up and agitating you and messing up your life and your kids' life and your grandkids' life. Okay, you guys, we're going to get into a card. Let's see who's in. Oh, Earl's here too. I know I'm not alone now, Tammy, but I mean, I'm not scared to die and intend to die alone at home. That's interesting that you say that, Earl, because I don't give death too much thought. I have given it thought only in relation to my well-being, that I have people around me that don't have good health, that do struggle in health issues, and so I attribute the fact that I don't compulse about, right, when my last day is going to be, uh only because I don't have I don't consider myself, I could have bad health, right? I'm just unaware of it because I feel physically well, right? And like I said, we've all got handicaps emotionally, mentally, or physically, right? My handicaps were all emotional, right? And I am grateful to be able to have delved into those topics and resolved some of those issues. Some of those issues will never be resolved, but I can better appreciate them and better handle them than what I used to. And I'm talking about the triggers, right? The things that would get me all worked up because people know how you work and know how to hit that button and just get you all stirred up. But for me, I think also, my beliefs, right? Cindy's never coming back, right? Once Cindy's done. But I believe that there are other parts of me that will move forward, right? That will resurface at some point in someone. And I feel that, what I'm doing now in working in emotions, that will benefit those other parts of me, that they won't wake up and be totally, right, in that spin cycle of life with a character that they can't connect with in any way. And that's my intent, that somehow, that through what I'm doing, that they'll move forward and be able to resurface properly. And right, that's evolution, to be able to better move forward. And if they're lucky enough, they'll pop into somebody that doesn't mind sitting in with some characters who have been long gone. Like Carl Jung's been gone since the 60s, right? He actually passed away like 4 months before I was born. He passed away. And so he's been gone a long time, but his lessons stand to credit even to this day. People look up to him, and he's not the only one. There were a lot of people that were delving into these topics that I love to delve into. But I believe they probably did it for themselves, right? Just as much, if not more, than doing it for others. It was their professions, right? That's how they put the roof over their head. I'm not quite putting the roof over my head with that, but that's not to say at some point I won't, right? but that's not the intent. I am doing this for me, and then part of my give back, right, is to maybe possibly do that for others. And these Monday to Fridays is those slots to do exactly that, in practicing my craft and letting people know that I am practicing my craft. And it's to each one of us in our choices in what to do with those understandings, right? You can sit at home with the remote control and watch Big Brother and Survivor, or you can get online and you can say, what's the subject that I absolutely love? And what's the question? And just Google it and just start from there. And it's in that repetitiveness of being in the content that Google gets to know you, YouTube gets to know you, and they'll divvy out those lessons. And then every once in a while they'll say, oh, are you interested in learning something a little bit different? And you hit that button, yes, and then you just move a little bit more forward, right? And I've been doing this for a very long time now, but I also put a lot of hours into it also. So it's just not something that I'm doing as a hobby, right? I am doing this as it's my life project, right? It's my life project, and it's what I bring to the table in exploring the inside and the outside. Okay, you guys, let's see who's in here. Okay. Um, oh no. I would have something in place. I tell my sisters if they can't get a hold of me, right, then you call the caretaker and you have them check on me. If somebody in my family messages me, I I message back within an hour. I will stop what I'm doing. I very rarely will miss a message. It's one of my top badges in my marketplace is that I always reply within the hour, always, right? But at the same time, I understand that, I'm on my own too, right? I don't want to be found 2 weeks after I've been gone because I'm stinking up the hallways out in my apartment building, right? But it is what it is, and it's in our choices. But you got to think, is it going to be any better if you were with somebody? Because it's in those experiences, right? And we'd be putting somebody else in a traumatic experience in having us pass away. And if you really think about it, we all pass away by ourselves, right? We always do. Very rarely do we get to have our loved ones around us when it happens. And that's a truth. And I think there's I remember going through the statistics on that, and I don't know if it was like 70% or 80%. It was really, really a high number. And we pass alone. So it's what we do in the in between, Earl, right? How we show up in the in between, right? Or you can put yourself in an old folks home, right? And it's not like putting down the old folks home, because when and if it's time for me, that's where I'm going to go. If I can't take care of myself, somebody will have to take care of me because, right, I'm planning on living to be 114 years old. I don't suspect that I will be hiking trails at that age, right? When it comes to that point, then I'll make that decision, or somebody in my family will make that decision for me. And I would just accept that, right? But when it's my time, it's my time. That's the way I think. But I believe my beliefs attribute to the fact that I don't compulse about when my last day is, right? I don't think about death. I don't give it much thought at all. Um, like I said, partly because of my good health, that I don't have those aches and pains, right? I do have wrinkles, but I don't have kids that reflect, right? That age at me. Like my one sister, who is like 6 years younger than me, has a 30-year-old son, right? And he's a big man. Oh my goodness, he's a big man, and he's like 4 times her size. And you look at that and you go, oh my goodness, she popped that out. She popped that out, but it's a reflection on her, so she feels that age, right? And it does take a toll on the body when you have kids, so you have to give credit for that too. But it's when you don't have those mirrors, right? I don't have that husband that I have to take care of, and right, and I look at his face and his gray hairs and his wrinkles, and I go, oh my goodness, we've been together for so many years, what do I look like in the mirror, right? So, and because I'm young at heart, and because I have lots of acquaintances, I don't always hang out with them. I've become a little bit more isolated in the past few years, but appreciating that's what I needed, not looking for that attention, which is funny that I say that because I'm online 6 days a week, right? That attention does come, but I don't do it for that reason, right? And I don't know if I could truly say that, because I remember when I, no, yeah, I remember when I first started on YouTube, I wanted to be like Logan Paul. I wanted to be a YouTube superstar, but I think it was just for the money, right? Because I thought YouTubers were making big money and stuff, right? I've been doing this for 11 years. I'm not getting rich off of it, but I'm still here, and I'm doing it for a different reason now. And I think I'm doing it for a better reason than wanting to be like Logan Paul, because that's a busy life. That's a hairy, scary life. And I'm sure lots of people don't even know who Logan Paul is, but he's a fairly young gentleman too, right? I don't stay in my age brackets too, right? My acquaintances and the people that I hang out with, because I relate to all different ages, because I don't recognize my own age. I don't have those things around me to remind me that I'm old. I don't spend a lot of time in front of the mirrors counting my wrinkles. Okay, you guys, let's just get into a card. If you don't know, 54 powerful words. We're just going to go into it for a few minutes. Maybe it's relatable to some part of the conversation that we had tonight. Um, and if not, well, I'll give it my best shot and see what Cindy comes up. It's always my first perception, right? First thing that comes to my mind. I call it a perception. I try to, instead of saying a perspective, because each one of these powerful words, depending on the circumstances, the experiences, the conversations that we're having, it could be relatable in a different way. So I never tie it down. I never ground it to one aspect. Here we go. This is the card. Oh, you guys, it's kind of relatable to what we were talking about today, right? Willingness. Willingness is faith over doubt, right? Willingness is just allowing yourself to be pulled in, right? Not necessarily by force, but by curiosity, and by understanding that we don't have all the answers. We don't. The answers are so close now, right? But if we're at least willing to look at a different perspective, a different perception, right? Like a perception is just the learning process to get to your perspective, to get to your truth, to get to your belief. But how do you get there if you were brought up in one belief, right? And that was compounded into you to be the truth. This is it. This is the way it is. You love Buddha or you love Jesus, right? You believe in reincarnation or you believe it's all over or you believe in aliens, like, right? Like we all grow up in somebody else's, usually our guardians, our parents' ideas. And sometimes we break away from those understandings and go off in our own directions, right? But sometimes we get totally stuck in them and we take them on as our truths, right? Because they're your family's truths, they're your family's beliefs, right? But if you're at least willing, right? Just willing to listen to another perspective, another idea, right? Instead of just sitting on the couch with the remote control and being entertained by with whatever's on TV, that you can go off and search out subjects that you're interested in and just be willing to be pulled into different stories, different creations, different experiences. And maybe in that, you might be able to find something that was totally true for you 5 minutes ago, but is totally untruth now and might not be solidly a perspective, but it's a new perception, something new that you never even gave any consideration to, that it might give you a direction at the very least, right? A new hobby, a new interest that might lead into something that's more true for you, right? Willingness is faith over doubt, right? Faith in yourself. Faith in yourself. That's what willingness is. It's just to have faith in yourself, not to put your faith in somebody else's truth, to actually search out and feel out what that truth is for yourself. Okay, you guys, that's going to be my good cheer. Everybody, you'll have a great night. Thank you so much, everybody, for popping in. Having people around us when we die is useless because once you fade out, you can't see them anyway. I don't know. For myself, I wouldn't want anybody to shed a tear, right? There wouldn't be any time because I would be back already. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer, and we'll see you tomorrow.